Many corporate employees who use Claude to build systems expect their first run to create a 100% perfectly done project with one prompt in one shot. But anyone who's actually run a real Claude code project can understand that that's definitely overly optimistic. Your first iteration is never the one that you actually end up using. And so the real question isn't necessarily how much information can I load in the beginning to get AI to get this perfectly in one shot. It's more so how few iterations does it take to get me to my final objective. And there are features that we can do to improve these odds. And these are features that they just won't teach you in enablement sessions at work. So quickly before I get into it, everything I'm about to show you is actually what I run day to day. This is how I keep myself from blowing through a context window at 2 p.m. Or hitting my usage limit for the day. There are other things that I do that aren't going to be in this video. So if you got some good ones, go ahead and leave it in the comments and I'll check it out myself. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through these in order that you'd actually hit them. So there's going to be 4 stops. It starts with 1, the prompt, because every session starts with a prompt. 2 is plan mode before anything actually gets built. Then we go into 3, and that's with the features that are actually sitting inside Claude Code that keep a long session from getting expensive. And finally, number 4, which is the skills that you install on top of Claude Code. We're going to test these skills using a dummy website build project for my company, Actionable AI, just to see how I would use these in a real world context. So we're just going to go and jump straight into it. So for this, the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to be using Claude Code. I know that might throw some people off, and you might be used to the co-work view, but in all honesty, start getting used to Claude Code because that's really going to teach you some really good habits that as this world of AI starts evolving, you're going to have a really solid set of skills and habits that are interchangeable across new platforms. In order to set it up, it's very simple. You just have to download this app, VS Code. When you download that, it's very simple. It's free. You can get it online here for free, run by Microsoft. And once you download that, you're essentially going to, the very first view that you're going to have is this here. Basically close out, looking like this, right? Open folder, and just these icons on the side. You're going to want to go into this extensions button here and really just search for Claude Code. And you're going to see it's going to search for it. And you already saw it basically popped up there. You're going to install it there and then make sure that it's viewable on your banner icon there. And once you have it installed, you can see it. I have it here. And I have it up here. But once you have it installed, you can basically start a new session by clicking over here, a new session, or you can start over here and click a new session. Next thing you're going to want to do is set up a new project folder. So regardless of whatever project it is that you're running, maybe you have a project you're already running, maybe you're watching this tutorial and you have nothing going yet. I'm going to open up an example here that I have for this tutorial's sake, and this is going to be the website development for my company, Actionable AI. Of course, this is just a test project, but essentially the skills that you're going to learn here are going to be interchangeable across whatever project you're working on, whether you're in HR, finance, marketing. All the skills that we're learning in this video are going to be best practices for whatever project you're working on. The very first thing we're going to go over is best prompting etiquette and practices. Now, whenever you're starting a new conversation with Claude, the best way that Claude is going to work is for you to be as context specific and as efficient as you can be in how you prompt, right? So you want to tell it everything that you have access to. What tech stack are you going to use? What tooling do you typically use on a day-to-day basis? What constraints do you have? What limitations do you have in regards to accessibility, or making sure that you have, data that can't be viewed by people? You should mention that too, right? And the more specific you get, the better results you're going to get. The end goal of everything you're learning in this video is how can I decrease the amount of times that I have to prompt Claude to give me the version of what I need. The best way to go about doing this is, in my opinion, by downloading a conversational speech to text tool, right? I use this app called Whisper. And what I really love about Whisper is it has 2 really cool functions, right? One is a polishing feature where if you speak into it and you have your ums and ahs, which I do a lot, as well as maybe not using the best phrasing or words that Claude could use, this helps polish that up. The second one is an actual prompt engineering tool that sets up your prompt in the most LLM efficient way of reading. So we're going to go ahead and do a prompt in this sense and see how that works and how our Whisper really works. I want to do a website audit on the current state of things for my Actionable AI website. In this audit, I'd like to be able to see everything from how deep the code is working, if it's inefficient, where it's inefficient, to how is the messaging on my website compared to other websites that are out there. I want to be able to understand the specifics, if I'm ordering things correctly in my website, if the calls to action and the actual signups work well for on the website. So give me like a full comprehensive audit of how to go about this. I also want you to ask me any questions along the way of even more specifics that I might not have mentioned here in order to really get a solid understanding of where my website currently stands. And so you'll see it's thinking, and it basically did the speech to text there. So we can see here, basically took everything that I had spoken and put it into this prompt. Now you can see I had gotten a decent amount of detail in, but I really want to go and take it into another level, right? And so there were some words that maybe I didn't use that were as effective. And so what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to highlight everything that I had. And this is the polish feature, where if you click option 1, it's going to take everything that I set up and basically clean up my verbiage and just make it a more effective prompt. So you can see here, it really cleaned it up. I need clarity on this. I would like comprehensive audit here, there. And so that's already better than what I had set. But to take it an even further step, if you highlight everything and put Whisper into prompt engineering mode, that's option 2. It's essentially going to format the entire prompt into an even better, more LLM friendly way. And so you can see it literally set it up into title, role and stance, what are you, the task that we're trying to accomplish, the context, right? And this piece is arguably one of the most important pieces, because the more context you give it in relation to this project, the better it is. And you have some other inputs here that it will fill in, right, on its own. So it'll find all the information right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and send this across to Claude, and we're gonna let it think and just see what the results are that it comes back with. So you can see here now with the output that it gave me a pretty good comprehensive guide of how it wants to go about doing this plan. And so it basically said what steps it's going to take in order to make sure that it does that. So it's going to check for dead code. It's going to test the load performance. It's going to extract my messaging. It's going to map the current page structure, all that good stuff. And then at the very end, it gave me a list of 10 follow-up questions that I can ask, or that I can answer, in order to give it even further context to how we want to go about going through this project. I think that piece is most important. Whenever you prompt something, you should always ask the AI, hey, ask me more questions about what I'm trying to achieve in this session. And that way the AI will give you more, it'll automatically prompt itself to have more context in relation to this project. So you could just go ahead and continue on with this prompt as is and continue building. But the issue when you're running something like this is when you're in this thing, you can see down here, it says auto mode. When you just let it run in auto as is, it's going to answer your questions and then go through with the plan that it developed, but it's going to just start building. And sometimes it's going to start building without answering questions that you probably wanted to answer before starting to build, and as a result, you'll end up being less efficient in your results, right? And that's where you start getting context bloat. That's where you start seeing your token inefficiency decrease, and all these other kind of like messy aspects where you realize you have to start iterating over and over and over again on the same pieces in order to get the result that you want. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this prompt that we started with here, and I'm going to switch out of auto mode into part 2, which is plan mode. And so essentially what happens when you click down here into auto mode, you can see the different modes that Claude Code has available. So you have manual, edit automatically, plan, auto, and bypass permissions. So all these 5 different modes have different ways of going about this project. Manual is going to ask you each step. Edit automatically is going to edit the project automatically and just ask you for a couple bash commands. Auto mode is going to switch across these different modes and determine which one's the best. Bypass permissions is just going to even execute certain coding and bash commands on its own. But ultimately, the most important one, I think, starting off any project is going into plan mode. And so what happens there is when you go into plan mode, Claude actually starts asking you and prompting you for these questions a lot deeper, and it develops a full plan before actually going forward with the execution. And that lets you get into the specific details of your plan a lot better. So I'm going to switch into plan mode for now here, and you can see plan mode is on, and now I'm going to take that same exact prompt that we went over and execute it now. And you'll see that it behaves a little bit differently when it actually goes through with this. It's going to start thinking and really understanding what the point is of this project. So you can see here it started thinking, and here's the first question that I asked here. So the audit guide is generic, and so should I keep it? It's basically asking me, should it go specific to this project or keep a fully generic reusable template for any site? And so I'm going to go ahead and do tailored for this site, since that's for the sake of this example, we're going through with this and gonna submit that. Then it's gonna keep asking some other questions. Sometimes, who is the primary audience? I'm looking to do the less technical stakeholder here. For the code depth and inefficiencies, deep should the technical guidance go? Let's do a high level review. Really want to go in depth and understand what's going on here. Or excuse me, yeah, specific tool commands. That's the correct one there. Any preferred format or length constraint for the final guide? Let's go and actually create a detailed reference doc. And so those are the initial questions that it's going to ask. Sometimes it might go into more depth and it might ask more questions, but if it asks me more questions, I'm just going to go ahead and answer those questions and then just show the output at the end here. So you can see here now the result is a full comprehensive plan of how it's actually going to go about doing this audit. So it really goes into details. It learned everything that's going on in my project and really just threw out what the deliverable is going to be, the guide structure that I want to go over, certain sections, right? Code depth, how deep we want to go with the code, the competitive messaging, the content hierarchy, the calls to action, and any sort of format notes. And essentially what it's going to do is, you can see the deliverable is going to be a new file. It's essentially just an audit file written to my project here, where it's going to give that feedback, and then I can choose whether or not to actually go forward and implement that in the process. So I'm going to go ahead and accept this plan and show y'all what the result is once it is done. So you can see here that it ended up writing the comprehensive audit guide for me. And so now what I can do is actually ask it to implement this audit guide and do the full audit itself. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Go ahead and move forward with the audit process, look at the audit guide, and find and actually go through with the plan that we developed. And what I'm going to do is switch into bypass permissions so that it just goes ahead, looks into all the files that it needs to, and come back with a holistic report for me. So final results, you can see here, essentially found some of the biggest issues, gave me a little quick summary here, and then actually wrote down the report and the results that it found right here on the right, and the actual audit findings. So what you can do now with this is just take it the next step and ask it directly, I want to implement these recommendations and changes that you added. Go ahead and just execute whatever you need to execute in order to make my website more efficient. And then you can essentially send that across, and then it will go through and actually implement the changes that it did. So initially it was, talking about the contact form that I have. The call to action had an issue there with 2 different tools. And then the homepage has no meta description tag, so that's an SEO problem for me. And then the messaging finding, it seems like I'm having some issues with messaging, and that the banner reads as generic AI vendor hype language. And so it kind of flamed me, but I can actually ask it to make these changes and ask it for recommendations on what to change. What kind of language would you recommend that I do? Or, how can I just make this overall more effective? And so that's really what plan mode can answer, rather than having to figure out what you want to and iterate over and over again to get to these answers. You can just ask it straight up and plan it ahead of time. So now that we've gone over plan mode, we'll go into the next feature, and that is going to be rule 3, where we are going to go over the actual features that are already built inside Claude Code. So one aspect of Claude Code that's really impressive is the skills feature. And essentially skills, you can imagine, are just recipes of instructions that you can use over and over again across different projects to be able to make your projects more efficient and more streamlined, right? In particular, there are several different skills that you can use that are already embedded when you download Claude Code that you can use in order to make your project run smoother. And the way that you actually activate skills is by creating a slash command. So it's just a backslash, and you can see already that when I do backslash, here are all my different slash commands that I have. A lot of these are slash commands that I've installed separately from my, from like GitHub repos and stuff. But we're going to go over the ones right now that already come with the install. So first one that I want to go over is context. This one is a really good one to understand, to be able to fully understand where your tokens are being used in any given chat. So we've had conversations with this chat already. It's been going on. We've developed a plan and everything like that. And so now I want to be able to understand what's going on with my current context. So let me run it again. If I just click it here, you'll see context usage windows in a pop-up. It's loading here. And here we can see how the current model that I'm using. So I'm currently using Claude Sonnet 5, and the amount of tokens that I've used in this chat window. Now, something important to note is Sonnet and Opus both have 1 million token context windows, and anything past 1 million tokens means that your system is going to start hallucinating. And so this is why, keeping track of your token efficiency is super important, because as soon as you start passing that 1 million threshold, your chat is no longer going to remember the conversations that you were having earlier on in the conversation. And so it's starting to lose that context. It's not going to be able to fully understand what you're trying to accomplish. And so there are ways in order to limit this. And again, we have some internal slash commands that we can use to limit this, but you can kind of see the breakout here of the different categories of how the current chat window is going. So you can see the system prompt isn't too much usage, system tool is not too bad, and all these other aspects aren't too bad. The one that really takes the majority of the context is the actual messages. Now, what does it mean when you're having a large context window in messages, right? So what a lot of people don't realize when you're talking about token efficiency is when you're having a conversation with your AI tool, each message that you send has tokens, of course, and every message that it gives you also relies on tokens, and that's that response, right? Now, the thing is that tokens aren't kind of a bank that, like money, where you just use it and it's done. It's you spend it. Tokens actually aggregate and accumulate. And so you can imagine, let's say you spend 200 tokens on the first message that you send. As a result, the AI spits back a 400 token response, and then you respond to that with a 300 token response. Right? Now, your bank isn't just 500 tokens that you've had of the conversation that you've been sending. Then now the current context that you have is actually the 200 plus the 400 plus the 500. And so that's 1,100 tokens. And so that can quickly add up as you start having longer and longer conversations. And that's why right now in this particular context window, we have a really large token usage in the messages section because of that back and forth. And so that's why, there are ways around this, right? And that's what these next few skills that we're going to go over will cover. The next skill that I want to go over is the compact and clear skills. So these two skills are really going to be able to help us really understand how to control that context that we're looking for. So we'll start with the compact skill. Essentially, the compact skill is going to be the skill that will essentially deeply summarize the conversation that you're having with any chat window. And what that does is, by summarizing it, it will essentially summarize everything, clear the prior context of the conversation you've been having, and then use that compacted context to feed into the window, and therefore you will lower the amount of tokens that are being used for the conversation. So I'll go ahead and actually run the compact skill, and I'll go ahead and let it run. It's going to take a couple minutes, so we'll go ahead and let that run, and I'll come back when it's done. All right, and so that took around 4 minutes to actually be able to compact, but you can see here the compacted chat has actually freed up 168,000 tokens. And so now if we run the context / command again, we're going to be able to see that it significantly cut down on where the token usage, right? Before, where we were at like 116,000 tokens for messages, it's now down to 28, right? And so that freed up 168,000 tokens, and now we can continue having that same conversation without fully losing the context that we had prior, right? The next skill that we're going to go over is the clear. So very similar to the compact skill, it's essentially just going to help you completely clear out your chat window, and you're essentially starting from zero. So for example, right now, and this, I'm just going to use it for, I don't want to use it for my main chat, but for this other chat, we're seeing here that we have 57,000 tokens being used in this particular case. If I were to just hit clear, it's going to go ahead and just completely clear that chat. And if we hit the context usage window again, you see it's essentially cut down on the token usage here. So this is also really good, / command to use if you want to be able to significantly reduce your token expenditure, and compared to compact, where compact actually creates a summary of what you've done. But in this sense, and to add to this, right, all these other tokens, these are things running in the background, so it's not going to go completely to zero. This is always what the amount of tokens each chat window is going to use, given the tools that it uses in the background. But you can see in messages, it essentially has no token expenditure now because of the clear. The final internal skill that we're going to go over is the /model skill, and this one is exactly what you think it is. Essentially, if you do the /model and you click, you'll be able to see which model you're actually using here. So right now we have Sonnet 5, right, and the effort is set to medium. These are the other models that are available. It's great to switch models. You can actually, if you do /model and you actually click to switch model, then you'll be able to switch across whichever model you want to use for any specific task. And this is really important to when you're running, very high complex use cases where maybe you're not going to want to use Opus, right, to do this. Let's say, for example, maybe the best, in my opinion, one of the best combinations of model usage to skill usage is run Opus in plan mode to be able to develop a very concrete plan of how you want to move forward with any project or any particular build. And then when you build out that plan, if it makes sense, just use Sonnet to actually make the connections, build out the project, and go forward, so that you're actually being more context efficient. And then for any automations that you have that are very simplistic, where it's just data being sourced into another pipeline or an email, and it only has one connector, maybe you can use Haiku, right, rather than having to use Sonnet or Opus, where it's just a repetitive task that's very simple. It just those types of best practices are going to help keep you more context efficient and more token efficient, and ultimately that's what makes you stand out and being able to use these types of LLMs. Is how can I accomplish what I need to accomplish while using the LLMs in the most efficient manner possible. The final piece that we're going to go over is Rule 4, and that's actually going over the skills that you install on top of what's already existing in Claude Code. Those are external / commands, right? Now, those can be in different forms of whether those are just skills, which is just one markdown file that explains everything, or plugins where you might have a bank of skills that exist, right? And what exactly does that mean? Well, I mean, you're essentially, it means that you're pulling these skills and plugins directly from somewhere like GitHub. That's arguably one of the safer places to pull it. Always, whenever you're looking for skills on GitHub, make sure that they're rated highly, just so that you know that there's nothing malicious going on in them. But two of my favorite context-related skills or slash commands or plugins are superpowers and caveman. Now, starting off with superpowers, this is a great GitHub repo skill that you can essentially just pull. It's completely free. You can see it has 272,000 stars on GitHub. And essentially what's inside, you can see that if we were to scroll down, is it's essentially a testing skill, right? So you have these several different skills that help you throughout the complete process of building out a project, whether that's from brainstorming to creating writing plans to actually executing on these plans, doing code review, finishing development branches, approaching in a sub-agent, with a sub-agent view. Sometimes, having everything run in just one chat instance doesn't really make sense when it comes to context or token efficiency. So it'll know how to best send sub-agents to do certain tasks, right? And so this is a great skill for very complex, in-depth projects that you're trying to go for. I wouldn't use this for something that's a little bit more simplistic, but I would use it just to test it out and see really what it's capable of. This is the first skill, and the second skill is caveman. Right now, caveman, very simple, right? It's essentially what it does is it simplifies the language of the responses that AI gives you. And so you can kind of see the task here, right? Let's say you have a task that you throw into AI, and essentially it'll just run as normal. So normally, let's say that it might take this many tokens to be able to run this task. With Caveman, it cuts it down, and it really costs you a lot of savings. Now, how essentially does that work, right? Well, the way it works is AI is giving you words, right, and responding to you in a certain way. Those words cost tokens. Caveman simplifies the vocabulary that AI uses so that it actually ends up using less tokens in that sense. Now, something for this to note, Caveman only shrinks the output tokens, and it actually adds certain tokens per turn. So, you can see here really the real win that you're trying to get out of this is actually readability and speed. So you can just get your you can get your projects done quicker if you're trying to read stuff quicker and want to send it out. But there is a cost savings component to this skill. So definitely a good skill to download. And there are many others on GitHub that you can try to find, right? And you can really just search them up and see what kind of skills there are that people are making out there in order to help with context efficiency. One thing to note, if you want to be able to download these skills, they're actually very simple. You can literally just start a Claude instance and ask Claude to download it for you. So I'm going to say, download this GitHub repo for me. And then I just send the link, and then it's going to go through and try to do that. And so you can see now the skill has been downloaded. So now if I run Caveman, you essentially just you need to start a new conversation because it needs to start. But yeah, so there you go. You have the different Caveman skills that you can go through here. I'll just go ahead and click one and see really what happens here. So there you go. Already kind of starting off slow. Caveman mode on, full level, ready, what task? Already much simpler than what AI would normally give you. And that's how you become more context and token efficient when you use Claude in the workplace. Everything in this video is what one person can do to become more efficient with their AI usage. You multiply it across a team where nobody's doing any of it on a plan that somebody in finance is overseeing, and you'll start to see the usage bills quickly start to decrease. If you want more in-depth review of where your team may be burning its usage, that's what the AI burn rate quiz is for. It's free, it's just a couple minutes, and it tells you where your team is actually losing time and money on AI right now. The link's in the description and in the pinned comment. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.